Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the Brannigan Communications Podcast. I am your host this week, Grace Gregg, and I am joined today by Griffin Goda and Emma Wallow.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. How was everyone's weekend?
Good. Just started moving.
Oh, yeah?
Exciting. Yeah, yesterday, but
Do you have boxes?
in progress. I have 5 boxes that I'm just reusing them. I take them over, unpack them, and then I take them back and repack them. So that's what we're doing right now.
Do I know, are you moving like...
I don't know if you knew this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm moving by Lakefront Brewery. Everyone. Come visit.
Like one of those spots like across the street?
Yeah, it's like right along the river. We can actually like see the river from our balcony, which is exciting. So yeah.
Very cool.
It'll be a good time. How was your weekend?
Good.
Good.
Not moving
No.
anytime
So
soon.
better than my weekend.
Well, it's always exciting though.
Yeah, it is.
That's kind of like, you know, in line with the theme a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving.
You know.
I feel like you've been talking
Transitioning.
about moving. I moved. You're moving. There's a lot
It's
of
that time.
transitions here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little bit behind you guys, but I'll get there.
Yeah. Well, like you said, today's theme is kind of about that and transitions. And this week we're reflecting on our past lives, aka past jobs. Basically, I want to know what skills you've picked up that have shaped who you are today through all different kinds of jobs, whether that was, I know, Emma, you've worked at Culver's, so if it's fast food.
Special place in my heart.
Or maybe internships or any odd jobs that you did around the house, maybe for your parents. So you can say the name of the company if you want, or you don't have to.
I've worked at so many places.
That's good. That's why we targeted you for this episode.
And I actually wasn't sure if this was about like reincarnation or not either.
Yeah.
So this clarification is helpful.
It's good clarification. Yeah.
Maybe you could draw on some of that. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I don't know if I have had a past.
Unsure.
Yeah.
You're like, Grace, am I qualified for this episode?
I don't know if I was like a dog at one point or something.
Do you feel like you were?
No. The only thing I feel like that's even remotely close to that is like deja vu. Do you ever get senses of deja vu? Mm-hmm. Like you've been somewhere before, or like you've had the exact same experience before.
Or conversation.
Mm-hmm. I don't get what that is. I don't know if that's a separate topic
Always
or not.
throws me off.
Yeah. Well, no, unfortunately, we're not talking about reincarnation today, but we are talking about, any kind of job experience that you've had in the past and how it's maybe brought you here. So, yeah.
Take you through the years.
Can you give us an overview of your past job experiences?
Yeah. Taking it real far back, this was unpaid, but I was like a teacher assistant at Sunday school. So that was like my first kind of, because I had to like prepare lessons and stuff. Like it was intense. But so I did that, and that was, I was like 12. My dad was the Sunday school teacher, so I was like his little partner. So that was like one of the first things I can think of. Then I had just a lot of like restaurant experience. I started my restaurant career at Fortune Cookie, which is a Chinese restaurant in Eau Claire. I did not make any of the food. I just answered the phone and was the coordinator for everything. So I did that. I worked at Culver's when I was in college for a couple years. I came back over the summer and I worked there. And also, fun fact, I don't think you guys know this about me. So there's a pizza place in Eau Claire where there's a pizza named after our family. It is called the Wallow Works.
Oh my God.
And so it's owned by a family friend of ours, and I worked there as like a server and like the person who did deliveries and stuff. And my dad would always order a very specific pizza. And
Please say there's French fries on it.
There's not, unfortunately. It's not a pizza that I enjoy, which is upsetting. But
do you guys like French fries on?
No,
it's just with how potatoes are my favorite food.
Like, what would Emma's pizza be? That's what I was thinking.
Truly.
Yeah.
But so I worked there. I worked there actually at the same time I worked at Culver's. And then when I was in college, I was kind of like, for a while, I had 3 jobs at once. I was working at the provost office on campus, which I was just working as like an admin person, putting together Excel spreadsheets and balancing like people's credit card balance statements and things like that, just like balancing all the charges. And then I was working at the same time at Build-A-Breakfast, Build-A-Burger. I was a server there just after it opened. And then that was also the same time that I got my first internship, which was at the Milwaukee Art Museum. So I was doing those 3 at once. And then after I worked at those places, I worked at the Marcus corporate office as a social media intern for the theaters division. And then I started here. So I dabbled in other little odd jobs and stuff throughout that time period, but those are the career highlights, if you will.
Wow.
So
That's a very good variety.
yes.
It's very linear. I don't know if I'm gonna have to really
dig
up
back.
my resume for this.
Well,
Just to close the circle, what is on the Wallow Works?
Oh, I always forget. So I know there's banana peppers. There's sausage, pepperoni, black olives, and I think one other thing that I don't remember.
Kind of like a
It's like a Supreme-ish,
modified Supreme
kind of thing.
Sounds good.
But yeah, apparently it's very popular. And every so often, I'll have people text me and say like, "Is this named
you?
after your family?" I'm like, yes, it is.
That's awesome. All right, cool.
Griffin,
You want me
please
to just?
give an overview if you can remember all of the jobs you've had.
Well, I'm older than you guys, so it might
Was
take
not a
longer to
day
go
at
through.
your age.
So I was saying before we started that I knew somebody in the Department of Forestry department for the city of Green Bay, where I grew up. And so for the first few summers when I started working a summer job in between high school, that's what I did. I'm trying to remember the first one. The first one was the Department of Forestry. So I would follow tree trimmers who would like prune city-owned trees along the street, and they would drop a bunch of brush, and then me and another college person would throw it into a wood chipper.
Would you follow them on bike or on
Bike?
foot?
On bike?
We need a wood chipper. You need to have
Okay.
like the big wood chipper. We had to drive a big
So you
truck.
like rode in it.
We drove it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe I wasn't very clear.
I just wasn't sure.
We're trying to get a picture of this.
So
I didn't know.
the truck in front had like a little arm that they could go up into the trees, and so they would trim trees that just overgrew too much, or just kind of to keep them healthy. Actually, pruning's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
we would follow with this big truck that had a wood chipper, and our whole job was just to clean up the piles. And so you'd have like scratches on your forearms from all the trees
Dang.
and the limbs, and depending on the kind of trees, I think like linden trees were really bad. So you kind of learned a lot about that environment. And then we would take once you filled the truck up with wood chips, you'd drive it to a park and lay it down on a park somewhere. So it's kind of, circle of life.
Very meta.
So then I think I did 2 summers of forestry, and then I did 1 summer in the street department, which you kind of did some landscaping like on city streets, so boulevards and stuff like that. That was by far the most boring department.
What kind of landscaping?
Like weed eating and stuff like that. It wasn't very. But then from streets, I went and spent, I think I did 2 or 3 summers in the sanitation department. So that's when I was a garbage man.
Amazing.
And, garbage has just evolved over the years. Now a lot of it is like just with the arm. You probably see like the arms come through and pick up the bins, but used to be that a person was riding back there. So you would have to get out at every stop and dump the garbage in and then get to the next spot. And
Wow.
so it was a really good like workout.
Yeah.
And you just tried to do it as fast as you could. That's what I always tried to do. I tried to do my route as fast as possible and like get it done with, because it wasn't always, there's some dark moments.
Can imagine.
Especially like rainy mornings, like a Monday morning in the rain. It's not much worse than that.
No, truly.
And then, then you were just done, and you would drive it out to the dump, and that was kind of your day. So.
Were you with your friend for all of these jobs, or?
Well, you were always paired up with, like a full-time person, because you have to have, I think, a CDL, like a special license to drive a garbage truck. So they would pair a summer person with, they call us the summer meet.
I don't think I would like this position.
There's an endearing term. But they would just put you on a truck, and that would kind of depend on your route for the day. So we would all kind of know like the route and like depending on the day of the week and the truck, there were some routes that were like really long and weren't very fun, and there were some other ones that were like shorter and maybe like more in the like on the countryside of Green Bay, so maybe a little bit like less heavy too. So there's a lot of like, angling for the routes and stuff. It was the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow.
That's just my summer jobs.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I have more questions, but I feel like you should keep going.
There's no time.
Maybe we can circle back if you want to learn more about sanitation.
Follow Griffin on Instagram.
He's left that life behind.
Yeah.
But it's still with me at the same time. So then, like, I would do that during the summer for college, too. That's why there were so many summers in there, if people were doing the math. I would come back home and do that. Then in college, I worked for the student newspaper as the sports editor. So that was kind of my first little foray into writing and stuff. It was always kind of something I wanted to try, and I finally just like pulled the trigger and applied. And it was kind of, at the time, I didn't even really need to I had to have some experience, but it wasn't like a big interview process. I kind of just, they were like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, but that was really fun, like to do like the newsroom, and like I really liked the flow of a weekly paper, because you had to kind of decide what you were going to write about, and not everything was as timely as some things, and just like the whole process. Like Wednesday nights, we would always like do all the story edits and do all the layouts and stuff. So like Wednesday night was always like a late night to like get it done into the printer, but it was always like this great feeling, this great satisfaction feeling. And then you would see it come out on Thursdays, which was cool. So after college, interned at the Press Gazette, the daily paper in Green Bay. I did a summer internship in like the entertainment section, so I wrote about new restaurants and summer events and stuff like that.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, that was actually pretty fun. I made up my own like recurring series where I would just go to restaurants and like try an appetizer and a drink, and then just like write a little review about it.
Very cool.
That was my first because even within a newspaper, you kind of have to like pitch stuff to your editor, So that was like my first practice at like, here's some idea I had, and like lining up like the photography and stuff, because you can't like just go take photos yourself. So you'd have to like book time for the photographer to go over there, and then you'd have to go over there. And so that was just an interesting experience. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then after that, I graduated, and that was like, I don't know, when did I graduate? Like 2010. There wasn't a lot of like jobs. It took me a while to find something after college, and I eventually moved to Madison to just work. My friend's uncle works at a place in Madison. It's like a third-party review of medical necessity. So it's like an independent review place to determine whether insurance is necessary.
Oh.
So it's interesting, but it was more like psychiatric. It wasn't like physical. And then I was just doing like all kinds of stuff there. I was like IT support if they needed it, and like intake of like information, because they had like this roster of doctors that they would send these cases to give their independent opinion if it was medically necessary or whatever. So I did that for a while, but that was essentially like an office job. Like I was just like working, and I wanted to move, and so that was that. And then I wanted to like get back in. I was always still kind of writing, either like freelance, or I was writing for some blog networks for like, nothing, no real money, but I was just like writing just to kind of keep the muscle strong.
Yeah.
Even during the office job.
Yeah, I would write like in the morning or after work, just to like kind of keep that going. It always kind of still gave me that sense of satisfaction to like get something out, Then my friend got into school at Auburn University in Alabama, and we kind of kicked around the idea it'd be fun to move there. So I got a job at a weekly paper down there covering Auburn athletics.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you lived out of state, I don't think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a lot of new information.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I'm just blabbing.
No.
No, I don't think I've ever heard you speak for this long. So this is
This is huge.
How long were you there for?
About a year.
Okay.
So I covered Yeah, like one football season, I think. And, you know, like kind of like the beginning and end of like one football season, I guess. But it was like they were terrible and the coach got fired. And
Oh my gosh.
so it was
there's
kind of a turbulent year.
Tumultuous.
Yeah. And then the year after I left, they went to the national championship game. So
course.
you do the math on
Naturally,
that.
yeah. Why just a year?
Just a year. Well, I guess there's a couple reasons. Like I was ready to move back in some respects. I enjoyed it a lot. My friend, his fiance was coming down, and I guess if it was the position was just, you know, I thought it was a good start, but I was ready to like kind of try a different style of writing. So that was like the newspaper kind of style of writing. They didn't have any web presence at all, so I was trying to like get their website off the ground, but I was just trying to like, I don't know, I just felt like I was ready. It wasn't very long, obviously, in retrospect, but I was ready to come back. And so then I was able to get a job. There's a publishing company in Wisconsin called Multimedia Channels, and they do a lot of different, now they do a ton of weekly newspapers for smaller communities that a bigger company like Gannett doesn't hit. So, I mean, think of like, they're based out in like New London and Waupaca, Stevens Point. Like they do like kind of community, very like hyper-focused newspapers in those areas where it's like the Green Bay Press Gazette or the Appleton Post-Crescent just like doesn't really cover those areas. So they like have this little niche, and they have these other like niche publications, these niche magazines that they do. They do a lot for like, some of them are kind of based on just like it makes sense for the ads. Like they do like a wedding publication, just like all this like wedding stuff. And then like an On the Water magazine, like kind of waterfront living kind of thing. But anyway, they wanted to launch one about the Packers, the Green Bay Packers. So I was hired to kind of like help them launch this magazine, like a monthly magazine on the Packers. And our first kind of thing was like trying to get credentialed and seen as like an actual thing with the team, and we did that. But really then I was, because it was a new venture for them, so I was really like, I wrote a lot of the stories that were in each publication. I kind of decided on the monthly themes. I took a lot of the photographs because I would go cover games for the Packers. Which was interesting.
That's cool.
I wouldn't like cover it on game day, but I would go to like training camps and stuff like that. Yeah. Because it was a monthly magazine, I wasn't necessarily like covering the day-to-day stuff so much, but I was like trying to write longer stories. I guess that's what I was saying, more like leaving the Auburn newspaper job and going to the magazine. It was a chance to try to do some like longer form writing and having time to like do multiple interviews and really like structure like longer stories. Like I would write like 1,000-word stories or like 2,000-word stories, like kind of based on like the history, or I don't know. There was a lot of different angles that I played up with that. And then eventually they asked me to just kind of oversee all those niche publications. So I would be like working with like freelancers and stuff, and just like coordinating all those different magazines and kind of making sure that those went out the door every month. But I was still like, a huge part of it was working on the Packer magazine.
Wow. Wore a lot of hats at that job, it sounds like.
Yeah, so there, you know, there's some learnings there.
Yeah.
And then that was probably, again, looking back, it wasn't that long. I think it was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But no, I don't think it was. Anyway, I was just like, all right, now I'm writing too much. And this is like the 20s, where in my 20s where I'm just trying to like.
It was like it was the 20s.
The 1920s.
20s.
I'm not that old. I was just like trying to, I've always had a lot of different interests. So I feel like it was like, okay, I wrote these things. I know like kind of the bones of putting together a magazine, and that's awesome, but kind of wanted to try something different. So before arriving at Brannigan, my last job was at Silver Star Brands, which is formerly, but also still, the Miles Kimball Company. So they used to do a lot of catalog stuff back in the day, and now they are, you know, obviously more of an e-com based business. So they have a lot of different brands underneath Silver Star Brands, but I was working on like email marketing, website marketing, like kind of more campaign kind of style, like figuring out that side of it. What are we going to talk about this quarter? What's performing well, kind of like seeing like the data end of it, like how are sales going, like what seems to be working, like the email marketing kind of testing, A/B testing, what are people responding to better. So it was like taking my writing skills, but then kind of applying more of like a marketing approach to it. So at the time it was very different, obviously, than what I was doing before, but I was just ready again to just kind of try something different. And now I feel like here it's kind of a amalgamation of all the different things I've picked up along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that you ended up here. If you take all of the other stuff and put it together.
If it makes sense to you, that's good.
Garbage man included. No, I'm kidding. So I guess, okay, that was also really great. And
I'm excited about all this new information.
Yeah, all that background. So I guess in light of like the influencer era, right, that we know there are a lot of people here in our office that have had so much experience in certain areas that maybe they could even be considered influencers. Is there any trait, any skill that you've picked up on throughout all of that time and that experience that you could say like, yeah, I could be an influencer on this?
I don't think I'd want to be.
I would agree with that.
That wasn't the question.
If anything, it would just be like restaurant recommendations or home cooking tips.
Yeah.
Nothing that I don't know. I could probably, but I don't know. What does an influencer mean? What do you mean by that?
I guess by that I just mean like, have you learned so much about a topic that you're a thought leader on it, right? Like that you could be Emma.
Yes. Shaking my head no. That's interesting. I don't know. I almost feel like for this question, just knowing that I am earlier on in my career, I almost take like a interpersonal, like less, like more soft skills approach to answering that. Like, I feel like a lot of my experience has been very customer service focused and very like about connecting with people. And so I honestly would identify that as one of my stronger skills that I've developed just in work. So I know that's a much less traditional skill to offer as an influencer, but I feel like that's something that I have a lot of knowledge of and experience with. So go ahead.
Was there a moment that you could think of during your time, maybe earlier on in the customer service industry, that was a big learning moment for you?
Well, I think, and I apologize if this is not answering your question at all, but like one thing that I've always like really appreciated from working in restaurant experience, and that has just been always very unique to me, is like I just always have had people like very much open up to me in like any situation. Like, so there were so many moments where I would be working as, just a waitress or at Culver's, and people would just want to talk to me and tell me stories. And like, we'd have all these like really wonderful interactions that I still very much remember. And so I don't know, that was just, I've always appreciated that. And that's always just been a very like fun thing in that experience, is just having those little memories and those interactions with people. I don't know what it is, but it's just fun.
We've talked about that, where you have something where people just tell you stuff.
Yeah, and it would happen when, like, because I went to Marquette, and it would happen when I was riding the bus. Like, people would just like talk to me, and I don't know, I like it. Obviously, there are some situations where I like it more than others, but no, that's always just been a fun thing about being in those environments. I think you have more opportunities like that. So
yeah. What about you, Griffin?
What was the question?
The influencer thing. If you could be a thought leader,
or it was the restaurant.
Oh, right. I guess you said he already answered that.
I mean, yeah, we do a ton of stuff here that I have to be a thought leader on, because we just are building our digital side of the business so much that, I have to stay up to date on things, and I want to stay up to date on things because a lot of it's very interesting. So, there's a lot that I wouldn't call it thought leadership, but we have to be that for our clients, to be like, here's what's going on in the paid social media industry, for example, and like, here's how it's changing, and here's how we think you should use it, and here are the benefits and here are the negatives. Like, there's a lot of things that just being where I am at Brannigan is, I have to be the thought leader on it, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that did come to mind as you were speaking that I could probably speak to more than maybe some of the other people at our company is working with like nonprofits and charitable arms of companies, because that's something that I've worked on since I started at Brannigan, and it is very different than working with some other clients, and there are its own, unique challenges and opportunities. And it also was helpful coming here with experience working at the art museum, because that is a nonprofit as well. So I think I do bring at least some unique set of experiences working in that line of things. But
yeah, definitely. I understand that to a bit, like to an extent, just working in a nonprofit also.
Oh yeah.
They do function differently, obviously, than an organization or a company. So I feel like coming from one and then working with them, already having that knowledge probably was very helpful.
Totally, yeah.
So I guess when reflecting on all of that past work experience, is there a leader that sticks out to you the most? So like when you think about them, you think, wow, they taught me so much. Or so little.
Yeah, let's shout them out.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we could take that part out.
Well, this makes me think a little bit. You, Paige, and I a while back, we'd done that like internship roundtable, and I do feel very blessed looking back on the different leaders I've had, like at the different jobs I've held, because I think they've all offered their own unique information and very like distinct backgrounds that have kind of helped shape my own career. Even Charles, who was my boss at Fortune Cookie, I feel like taught me a lot when I was working with him, just about how to interact with customers and how to be more confident. I was scared to talk on the phone at that point when I was 13, 14, and so it was just like learning very basic skills like that. But I think besides obviously like the awesome management team here at Brannigan, some of the leaders that do really stick out for me were the people that I worked with at Marcus when I was there, just because that was really that was a really like defining opportunity for me, because the way that the internship was set up was you were interacting very directly with like people who'd been at the company for years and years and years and had, they were directors and chief marketing officers, and it was really my first chance to like be a part of that. And it wasn't the way that they've structured their internships and that they continue to do so is like you're a part of the team. Like you don't get separated from the work in any type of way. So you're interacting with all these people, and every like meeting that I had with, whether it was my direct boss who was the social media manager or the advertising director, I feel like I took away just like a lot of really great business knowledge, and just very like tangible skills, like whether it was learning how to be more effective writing social media copy, or working with Marcus. At the time when I worked there, they now have 80 plus properties. When I worked there, they had around 50, and it was just learning how to interact in a company where you have all these different stakeholders within the company and what you need to be saying to them and how you're getting the information out correctly. So I feel like I still continue to draw a lot of what I do now and how I base my decision making off of a lot of what I learned when I worked there. So yeah, I was only there for a year, but it was a robust year of learning and work experience. So yeah, shout out to all of them.
Yeah, I feel like I've probably taken something from every stop along the way. I even like the editor-in-chief at the time of the student newspaper, I remember just thinking was a really smart guy, and just kind of I think what I always have taken away, or not always, but what I have taken away to this point is just at every stop, it's just like so many different areas of expertise, and just kind of learning things that I didn't know anything about from people who are just experts in their field, whether it is like a graphic designer at Multimedia Channels when I worked there, and just kind of I would go there every month to sit and lay the magazines out with her, and she just like, I just thought it was like wizardry, just like, and like having
watching her on InDesign or something?
Yeah, and then just like, I don't know, just like, I think an appreciation for the process behind everything, whether it is building a marketing email and all the different things that go into that, or a magazine, or here like a campaign or something like that. Like, just so many interesting things go into one process like that, and so many different people touch it, no matter what it is, that I've always just kind of been appreciative of that, and the fact that these teams come together and people are able to kind of use their skills in a way that kind of contributes to this greater good. That's always been interesting to me. So I've always kind of taken that away. I don't, that's not really a leadership thing necessarily, but that's what I always think about. Like, even with the newspaper, I learned how that worked, and then I learned how e-commerce worked, and I learned how like a weekly newspaper in Auburn worked, and that was a little bit different just because of the different styles of, you know, how, I guess that was a smaller staff, so that for the reason it was kind of, we all just pitched in and helped each other, so that was a kind of a different thing than like the Press Gazette, which is a bigger newspaper that has more of a structure in place. So I don't know, I think I've always just taken away that process, and how there's I guess leadership in all kinds of different places regardless of what their title might say, because I always thought it was interesting that they were able to take command of whatever their little role was, and in a sense just lead that role. And I don't know, I'm maybe drawing it's not a direct line there, but I feel like I think I've just learned from all different kinds of people, I guess is what I'm saying.
Maybe not your direct boss or something, but still a thought leader in whatever thing they were doing. Emma, you mentioned at Fortune, you learned
Fortune Cookie,
not Fortune.
Very different.
Very different.
At Fortune Cookie, you grew some of your self-confidence, right? With like answering the phone.
That was at like a very baseline level. Like, I had to hype myself up to go to that job. I was like, I would get so stressed out, but it was just, that was like a good introduction to like what you need to do to be a good employee, I think. So.
No, definitely. But drawing from that, like one moment made me think, like, was there a job or a time period that you guys grew the most, and maybe like grew the most self-confidence during that time or job?
For me, probably at Brannigan, honestly, just because of just all the different work that I've gotten to do. Because I've, since starting here, I've been on a lot of different projects and a lot of different type of work. And before coming here, a lot of my experience was very like segmented to like customer service. And then I was starting to explore the communications industry, but it was always it was like at the art museum, it was PR was what I was doing. And then when I was at Marcus, it was very much like social media with a little bit of website. So it was quite segmented. And then coming here, I was just doing all sorts of things, all different kinds of writing, all different kinds of projects, working with all different types of people in different industries. And just looking back, like I do feel, because I've been here 3.5 years now, I feel like a different version of myself a little bit, just in, you know, even being on this podcast, coming in, I would not have been comfortable doing something like this. So I think I've just kind of gotten to the point where, through the work experience and through working with the team members here, where I am a lot more comfortable in, you know, owning my contribution to things, I think, whether that's on a personal or like a work related basis. So that's been really cool to see it just as part of my own personal and professional growth. So it's been good to be part of this team and continue to be.
I think I agree with you. It's probably been here. But I think being able to know that I was like putting together like a publication every month, that was a big thing for me, just to kind of get thrown into a process that I knew like 25% of maybe, and like being able to like see that through and like actually get that out every month, because, you know, if you don't, there's no product at the end. There's no thing that comes out of the printer at the end. So there's kind of like a clear, like, did you do it or not? So I guess that was maybe the first time I was I don't know. It was just kind of learning how to manage things like bigger projects at a bigger scale. But I think, yeah, being here, I've been here about the same amount of time as Emma. We started at about the same amount of time, or same time frame. And I think being here has probably been the most significant growth that I've had too.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's maybe because you've been here the longest and just with time you're thrown into crazier things? Or?
Well, I think it goes both ways. I think yes, because you get more experience and you handle more situations and you kind of learn, you know, something that maybe in my first year was like, this is crazy, I don't know what this is. Now it's like, yeah, I have experience, so I know how to handle it. But it's both ways too, because, you know, probably wouldn't be here this long if it didn't provide that kind of stuff.
Yeah, true.
So that's where I kind of feel like that's why it's been such a good place to be at for as long as I have been at. Like, I feel consistently challenged, you know. You're always learning more, and, you know, you get an opportunity to contribute actively, and kind of similar to like what I was saying with the magazine, but definitely different. But just being able to see an end product and work on something where
see it all the way through.
Right, see it all the way through. I've always liked that aspect of being here too.
Yeah. So is there anything maybe specific that you guys have picked up from the culture after being here for about the same time, like 3.5 years at Brannigan?
So culture-wise, so just like kind of talking about like how the team works together, things like that.
Yeah, and maybe any soft skills that you've picked up on that are prominent here or not, or any other skills.
Yeah. Well, I think I hope this answers the question. One of the things that like I've appreciated about being here is because like here more than any other job I think that I've had, I know everybody says and sets it up this way, like there are no bad ideas, but I feel like here we foster a culture that like you feel more comfortable sharing your ideas. I think at other places that I've worked at in the past, like the stakes have felt like a little higher just because of the people who are setting the expectations. But here I think the leadership does a really nice job of like being very encouraging. And even if, you know, what you have to offer is not entirely what's being looked for, like not entirely on the mark, like you say it, and then other people jump in and help mold it into something that is closer to what we're looking for. I don't know. It just, I feel like that also ties back to like the collaboration a little bit, because it's not, I think it's very teamwork oriented, and that's, I don't know, I feel like a lot more comfortable, like I kind of said earlier, like with my contributions because of the receptiveness of the team, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's been a cool thing.
That makes sense. I feel like, well, I think it's not a bad thing, but being able to be thrown into the fire and come out the other side of it with some projects where I started, and it was just like, you kind of have to figure out, and it's not like big deal stuff necessarily, but it's like, how do you write a communications plan if I've never written one before? It's just like, well, I figured it out. Yeah. I got some hard edits along the way, and now you have you're just way more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a benefit of being a smaller team still, even though we're growing. But being a smaller team, to be able to say like, yeah, we just need you to help with this stuff, and we believe that you have skills, and we believe that we're going to nurture your skills to get better along the way. And so you're going to maybe feel a little overwhelmed in some cases at first, but you're going to come through it better off. What do you think?
Well, I would agree with what you both said. As far as growing a lot here, and I don't know, along the way you pick things up from the culture. So just by nature, right? So just the way, I would say, like, I don't know, for me, something that I've learned here that's been huge is just like how to write. And Emma, a bunch of that is from you. But so like stylistically, maybe like if I were to go somewhere else, it would be like, you know, I learned that here. Maybe that's a lot like from Brannigan. How much work experience do you think you should have before entering the workforce? So like in high school and during your college years?
That is an interesting question, because I am definitely of the opinion that it's like the quality of your work experience versus the quantity. But I definitely think having work experience when you're in high school and college is very important, just because, I mean, even for me, like, that's how I learned, honestly, just to, like, interact with people that I didn't know, or like, and just, like, got to know how to conduct myself in a business environment, more in social environments. I just think it's an important skill from, like, all of those different standpoints. And, you know, now that we work with, now that I've worked on our financial services client, I'm like, also it's good to, like, start learning, you know, money skills and, like, start to have that, like, I have a sister who's 17 and she's the first of us kids, this is kind of embarrassing, but in high school to have had, like, a checking and a savings account. Like, none of us had a savings account in high school. And so I'm like, Brooke, get that going. So she has her job at the toy store and puts whatever amount of money in her savings account each month. So I think from just a lot of perspectives, like, it's important to build your social and professional skills, but also just, like, start to figure out how to shape your life as you start to grow older and start to become more independent. So
I would agree with that, though. Like, working with financial services, I feel dumb spending money on dumb things or not saving money the proper way when I'm pitching some of those topics. You know,
it's right there for you to
like,
see
the
answers.
Yes, and the importance of it. So, what about you, Griffin?
Well, yeah, I think it depends sort of on what you're going into. But I'm, like, for me, I'm glad that even when I wasn't writing for money, I was always writing. Like, I'm glad that I did that now, because being in this field, I think that's probably still the best skill that you can have, is being a good writer who can turn something into, you know, just any kind of a piece of content can be written out because you have that kind of foundation. So I think that that's important. But yeah, I think you can take something from anything, like you're saying, your days, like, in various restaurants and, like, service areas, like, you learned people skills, communication skills, like, even, like, sanitation. I learned that you have to show up somewhere on time.
Yeah, just, like, the most fundamental things.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's that you just got to be there in the morning. So fundamental stuff like that is good to build. And yeah, I just think, like, working in different environments and kind of getting a feel for how different places function and talking to different people and just trying to figure out how you fit. Like, I think it all adds up. It all is worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know. I think it just totally depends. Like, if you're going to do something that requires different skills, I think it's probably something that you're passionate about in one way or another. So maybe you're pursuing those skills, you know, whether or not you're working in it, and just, you know, being ready for when the time comes.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I feel like you said, working in sanitation taught you how to show up on time, right? Like, lifeguarding, same.
Yeah.
And I remember there were some people we worked with that didn't show up on time, and it was like, that's the only thing you have to do, and then look at the water. But you're on for 15 minutes
ideally.
and then off for 15 minutes, so it's not that hard of a job. So yeah, no, I think it's important just to get job experience and start young. You kind of answered this, but I guess if you could give a high school student some advice, maybe someone who does not want to work or is not very interested because working odd-end jobs because maybe they're driven in a different way and see themselves just like career and want to focus on school, right? What would you tell that person?
So what, they don't want to get a job, just a job because they only want to get a job that's in their relevant field?
Yeah, maybe they want to focus on school and sports and they don't think that working at Culver's or some lifeguarding in the summers or something like that is going to serve them for the long run.
I guess,
what would I say?
I would say, I mean, it is interesting because, like, I do look even just at my sister's life. She is a very busy person, like, much more so. Like, I was busy in high school, but she's super involved. Like, she's playing Fiona in the Shrek musical, so she's doing rehearsals all the time. She takes piano. She used to take vocal lessons. She's in Irish dance. She does all of these different things. And so for a while, it was honestly about like time for her. And so I think there's a degree of, assessing what is important to you and like seeing if a job will fit in with that and just like makes it onto that list of priorities at that time when you have the luxury of maybe not working. But at the same time, like a lot of the stuff that we've said kind of funnels into like the recommendation of at least giving it a try and seeing, what you could benefit from that, whether it be financially, social skills, all of those different things. Because I look back and I wish I would have started working earlier, but that's because I did have the time and like I would have been able to fit that into what my life looked like. And I think for me, I just was like nervous about getting a job, and so that's what held me back. So for anybody who was like me in that sense, like I would say that it's not like, don't be afraid of going to work. Like it will help you build your confidence and like all of those different things. So I think there's just a balance. But
yeah, I think there is something to like being nervous about it or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I was lucky enough I didn't have to work in high school, and I played basketball, so that was kind of my job at the time. But then I didn't work my first few years of college either, just because of that. Because I didn't necessarily have to, but I did think about taking like an odd job or something like that, and I never pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I should have, probably, because I probably had the time at the time, and before I started at the newspaper.
And I think I always realized like how much having a job benefited me when I would do it. It's like anything. It's like working out. You're like, oh, this is great while you're there. Because I mean, like with Culver's, like I gained like some of my best friends. Like I worked there now 4 years ago, I think, and like 4 or 5 years ago, and still like one of my best friends like is from that job, and I would not have met any of them if I had not decided to make that happen. So
yeah. And going back, so the fear of like getting that first job, Griffin, in the beginning you had mentioned like kind of making that leap from working these but more odd jobs to more of like an internship kind of job. I think your first one was at the paper, right? And I remember being like so nervous. I was working at Neroli down here as like a customer service. That's not the word that they use, but for the position. But I forget off the top of my head now. But anyways, working at the front desk there and gaining so much, like learning so many soft skills that I didn't even know I was. And I was so nervous to get an internship because I thought that was going to be so much harder. And like there was all this pressure and like conversation surrounding that I was like, oh, I'll just be comfortable here, working whatever. And then when I finally did end up getting that first internship, it was almost not as hard because you weren't working with people, and it was less work because it was, like only a few days a week kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like don't be afraid to get out there too is a good piece of advice.
Yeah, even if you have half a mind to do something, maybe explore that more.
Yeah.
And you can always, like, this might be an unpopular thing to say, but like you can leave if you get a job and you don't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I think for me,
true,
like
too.
it was always like I take responsibility very seriously, which is a good trait, but I think at some point it's like, if something's really not working for you, like you can choose something different. So you're not locked in. Like if you decide to take a job and you're like, man, this really isn't for me, like you can switch it. I definitely didn't think that way when I was like in high school and early college, but you can.
Yeah.
And we're saying it, you might not know how it's going to positively benefit you at the time, but probably a lot of jobs that you can take will somehow give you something, some sort of a skill.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Even lifeguarding. No.
Right. CPR.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you can save us.
Well, it's been a few
They're
years.
a little not
Need a
certified
refresher.
anymore.
Yeah, I think I'd have to refresh that one. But do you guys have anything else to add on the topic?
Of past lives?
But not reincarnation.
No.
Okay.
Do you?
That is all.
Okay, well, I think that's our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe to our channel anywhere that you get your podcasts.